Emperor Palpatine wanted to destroy the Jedi. As one of the last Sith in the line of Darth Bane, Palpatine knew more than any other just how long his forefathers had waited to exact their revenge. But when handling the affairs of his new empire, Emperor Palpatine was forced to make a tough decision in the allocation of his resources. And that led Sidious to announce, just 5 years after the start of the Purge, that his hunt for Jedi was over. Why exactly did Palpatine stop? And what could possibly have threatened his rule more than the handful of powerful surviving Jedi that threatened to rally whole planets to their cause? Join us as we answer these questions and more in today's Underrated Moment. Emperor Palpatine had waited a long time to hear the news. Koth was dead and his child was successfully captured. Koth was once a member of the Jedi Council and a powerful master who excelled at lightsaber dueling. Shortly before the execution of Order 66, he had successfully gone into hiding on a distant desert world. Unlike other Jedi, Eeth broke the code and took a wife, and together they successfully had their first child. It was during the birthing procedure that Darth Vader and his Order of Inquisitors arrived on the planet, and together they defeated Eeth. Koth's death was one of the last ones on a long list of former Jedi Masters that Palpatine wanted to kill. And now, with no more news of powerful hooded strangers who could push stormtroopers to their death using their minds, Palpatine quickly began to realize that he needed to shift around his resources. Darth Vader and the Inquisitors had already spent months in their apprehension of Koth. Would they really need to simply sit idly by and wait more and more for another Jedi to suddenly peek his head up from the crowd? It struck Palpatine as an awful waste of powerful soldiers. Instead, the Emperor decided that Vader would put his hunt for the Jedi behind him, and it couldn't have come any sooner. With no more enemies to chase around the galaxy, Darth Vader seemed to have turned his anger against his own allies. He had killed 2 Inquisitors in the few days since returning from the mission to exterminate Koth, and Palpatine worried how many more his apprentice would murder in the days to come. The Emperor wasn't overly attached to the Dark Jedi he had once recruited from the Jedi Temple in order to create the Inquisitors. After all, they weren't truly Sith, but they were powerful Force users. Since Vader had been so successful in his eradication of the Jedi and Force sensitives around the galaxy, finding new Inquisitors wasn't exactly as an easy prospect. After a brief mission report on the recent killing of the 2 Inquisitors and the destruction it had brought around Coruscant, Palpatine invited Vader for a walk around the palace and a short conversation. "I have the Grand Inquisitor's report," the Sith Lord said, as his frail hands waved a weak pointed finger at Vader. "The Jedi threat is not gone, but the death of Koth, we've completed as much as we can at this point." Palpatine finished and then hesitated before he continued to the next part. How many hours he had spent in years past, stroking the fires of resentment that young Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker felt for the other members of his order. Every word that slipped out of the Chancellor Palpatine's mouth was carefully crafted to instill a sense of mistrust in Anakin. A sense that would eventually culminate in Anakin's fall to the dark side and his 5-year purge of Jedi that he'd successfully undertook ever since. But now could Palpatine really turn the killing machine off? Was directing Vader's rage as easy as giving him a new assignment? The Sith Master would soon find out. "If more Jedi surface, we will destroy them," Palpatine said, before he hesitantly brought up the change in plans. "I have other missions for you now. First, you will travel to Alderaan. Bale Organa believes his world is sacrosanct, somehow immune to my will. You will demonstrate to him the folly of this position." Palpatine finally blurted it all out that Bale Organa, not the Jedi, were the true threat to the Empire now, and the Sith Lord waited for his apprentice's response. Vader had become increasingly resentful lately. Palpatine wasn't a fool. He could sense that his apprentice was no longer the youthful, foolish Sith that was so easily manipulated into serving Mace Windu's hand and killing the hundreds of Jedi that slumbered inside of the temple. Instead, Palpatine now squared off against a Sith in the prime of his power, and the only thing separating Palpatine from complete annihilation was Vader's own limitations, caused by the cybernetics within his suit. As the pair uneasily stood across from each other, Palpatine wondered what his apprentice might say, but he was glad to find out, after a bit of bartering, Vader would accept the command. The hunt for the Jedi would never end, not really. Palpatine tried to make that painfully clear to Vader. But, at last, for the security and stability of his new empire, Darth Sidious saw no point in using his most powerful soldiers in hunting down the less than a dozen or so Jedi that remained alive. And so the Purge was over, and Jedi, just like any other criminal, would need to be reported in before the Inquisitors would be dispatched.